How's it going this week, everybody? This week I'm going to be having a gentleman on that has a very interesting story from around 1996. I've never heard of anything like this before, but perhaps someone in the audience has. This episode is different than anything we've ever done before because honestly, like I said, I've never heard of a creature like this before. So go ahead and give this episode a listen. Let me know what you guys think. Also, a quick shout out to all the members. If you guys are interested in the membership, you can head over to challengetheunknown.com and get early access to new content before it comes out. Thanks for listening. So why don't you start from the beginning and tell me exactly what you saw?
Sure. It's a little backstory. It's one of those memories where it's like I've never forgotten it, but I guess I didn't realize how weird it was. I think it was just I thought it was a kid kind of thing. I stumbled upon the Reddit humanoid encounters, and it seemed like a lot of people were having not the exact same experience, but similar experiences with things that were just so bizarre that you just accept it and move on. So it was, I believe 1996. I'm coming home from a bowling birthday party. This is Vanderburgh County in Indiana, Evansville, Indiana, and driving home with my mom. I'm in the back seat, and we're at a stoplight, and I kind of, I'm just looking out the window, and I see a kid, kind of a bigger kid, sitting in the front seat of a station wagon, and he has a bag over his head, and I don't know how to describe it. It's not necessarily it's not like a paper bag, but it was some sort of covering. It seemed like something well made enough that it was used often, if that makes sense. And so that caught my eye. I kind of scanned it a little closer, and I noticed it was coming off slowly, and I saw kind of not eyes peeking out, but I could see that there was what was underneath was taking a look, and then the whole thing came off, and it was. I don't know how to describe it. I mean, it was a pig. It was a pig person. It was like a hybrid. I would say a very good hybrid. Because the mannerisms, the posture and the vibe were very human. But the features were a weird blend. The eyes looked very expressive. I saw them, scanning the environment, and then we locked eyes. We made eye contact, which triggered the next part of the story. But the eyes were very expressive, which I guess pig eyes. After I posted that story, I kind of was like, what do pig eyes look like? And I looked it up, and they are uncannily human. So I guess that's not a surprise. But the nose, it was kind of smushed in. I wouldn't say it was a snout per se, but it was flat, and it was blunt. So that was odd. And then I think once the nose kind of hit, I kind of automatically just tried to step back and scan the whole thing. And, this pig, I guess, had very flat ears, kind of thin, and not that they had like wiggle ability, but they seemed a bit floppy. And I called it a pig boy versus a pig man, just because the size of this thing was, my size, honestly, very, very, not a child, but certainly like a young adult size. So anyways, I'm taking that in, and still at a red light, and we make eye contact, and immediately, he it looked like a he, I guess, but he kind of, looked in shock. I feel like I'm projecting emotions on him where it's like shame. I don't know. But some sort of need to get out of here immediacy. And because, he's small like me, but he kind of dropped to the floor, dropped out of sight. And it was a very quick motion, very easy, so he didn't have a long way to go. And at that point, it kind of, the next movement I saw was the woman driver. And it was this older woman with gray streaks, with glasses, looked over. She didn't look evil. It didn't look like there was something bad happening. She just looked shocked and concerned. And she kind of looked over at me, the light turned green, she sped off, and that was it.
Wow, man, that's It's quite an experience. So let's recap a little bit here. The
Sure.
This thing that you saw, describe a little more detail for me. So to kind of clarify for the audience what we're talking about here. So humanoid in nature, appears to be human to a degree, but has extensive, bovine features like the ears, the nose. That's really interesting.
One more element. There was, the skin texture. Was it callow? I think is the word. It was certainly pink, but that kind of. I'm trying to think. There was, maybe I can send this to you later. I was in that thread, the Pig Boy thread. Someone linked an artist. I don't know if you followed deep into the comments, but someone linked an artist that does kind of weird animal hybrid sculptures, and the skin texture was exactly the same. It was this like juiciness. There was a juicy yellow. I don't know. It seemed very. It was different than a human tone for sure, but it was way more exaggerated.
Really interesting. I also think I used the word bovine, but I think that's particularly cattle.
Yes, that's right.
Like bison and stuff. But it's very pig-like. That's interesting, man. I haven't heard a story like this before. There's the Frogman and sure. The Jersey Devil. So, I don't think it's impossible. Because people see weird stuff. And back in I don't know if people are familiar with the Jersey Devil sightings in the early 19th century, but it was early 20th century. It was 1909. And apparently for this week straight, everyone was seeing this thing, and newspapers were collecting the stories and publishing them. And it turned out to be hundreds of accounts of this thing. Even cops were shooting at this thing. And
wow.
It got really bad. It got so bad that it caused panic. They shut down the schools, and workers were refusing to go to work. And then groups of hunters started, going around the pines looking for this thing because it was causing such a stir. But then the sightings just stopped, and people stopped seeing it. So people see stuff, man. It's not all in your head kind of thing. I've never heard of a pig boy before, but it's definitely interesting.
Well, I have two thoughts. I think first one is how is what you described not a movie? Because that's incredible. I did not know the history of that, and that's just with the gang of hunters would be a cool scene.
Yeah.
That's really cool. But I've been thinking about kind of what you're talking about, where it's like, what the fuck? Pigman. It feels like a one-off X-Files episode. There's really no history of pigmen. So I think from the perspective of what you're talking about, of what's the precedent here? I've been thinking about it, and Indiana is weird. Indiana is a weird place because we low-key have a lot of military. We have a lot of pharmaceutical. We have hundreds of miles of cave systems. The university complex with Purdue and Butler, they're very engineering science-based. I think, honestly, culturally, I think Stranger Things hit the nail on the head, that weird things happen in that kind of Midwest, which I think maybe that's the case with every state, but I feel like as Indiana people, we view the location of the Stranger Things, that kind of vibe, that kind of whatever it does kind of is present here. And I don't know if you ever saw a show in the 90s called Erie, Indiana.
Never seen it.
You remember that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, yeah. It was also just a weird connection where it was just a kid's show, really, really well-made kid show, honestly. And it was, just a town in Indiana, and it's kind of like a Goosebumps thing where every week there's a new creature or visitor, or, it's Twilight Zone for kids, essentially, but it was set in Indiana. And I think they really tapped into something that is here that isn't really explored a lot.
Yeah, man, that definitely sounds like it. It's weird, usually when I have people on, man, I can really dive into a lot of the historical accounts. Whenever people come on and talk about crawlers, we have, are you familiar with the crawlers and the rake sightings?
No, I'm not.
They're like these real skinny humanoid pale creatures that don't have any like, they don't have faces. They have no features essentially, but they're just like these real skinny, tall humanoid things. And people see them generally out in the woods. Had a couple people on that have seen one last week's episode, which I actually have to do all the post-production today on because tomorrow's premiere day for members. So
Nice.
I've got a lot of stuff to do today, but like there's a lot of theories around it. People say, well, maybe this is what people are seeing, or same thing with Sasquatch. Some people are like, well, it's an ape, and it's this and that, and back to the crawlers, it's, well, maybe these things are living in caves. That's why their skin is so pale. Maybe they've evolved in caves or something, and they one will kind of wander out into towns and stuff every once in a while. That's why people see them. So let me ask you this, man. Do you think? Obviously, I think you would say that this was a biological entity. This was not some like paranormal stuff.
It certainly didn't. Yeah, I certainly felt biological. There was no air of, not magic, but, there was no, it felt like there was an explanation for it. It felt like I was just 2 steps away from it. So it didn't make any sense.
Right. And I mean, was right next to you, man. How far away were you from it, if you could guess?
So it was on the Lloyd Expressway. It was, like I said, Evansville, Indiana, the crossing between Lloyd Expressway and St. Joe Avenue. And that's kind of a wider highway-ish, it goes from a 4-lane to a 2-lane. So there's room. I wasn't pressed up against this car, but, I think the way my mom and the other woman had parked, we were a little bit forward, that was a little bit back. So I had not a clear parallel angle, but a canted angle, looking forward. So if he were to look forward, I would only see the back of his, figure, which, at first, like I said, was that bag material, whatever that was, like a cloth thing.
Yeah,
and weirdly enough, just talking about Indiana being not that pharmaceutical companies are inherently doing creepy stuff, but it was in front of the Meade Johnson building, which is a pretty big complex for all that kind of stuff. So, I guess my tendency, my first thought is, is this an experiment? Is this some sort of, I don't know, like a field trip day,
Yeah, man, it's really interesting. I want to talk about the bag on his head. That's interesting. So you describe it as like some, like, would you say it was a pillowcase? Or
maybe a pillowcase would be like a rudimentary first prototype version of it. Like it had aspects of it wasn't like a falconer's hood. It wasn't like that, like crafted, but it was clearly effective of being put on and off pretty quickly. I didn't see any holes. I didn't obviously register what was happening. So I'm kind of remembering from hindsight, but I didn't recall seeing any like it was a mask, like he could put it on and the eyes could see, so I don't know what the experience was like with it on. But yeah, it looks like it was made for what it was doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really weird, man. Like if we were to play devil's advocate here and say, this was just a person with, some kind of, deformations or some kind of birth defects or something, or some kind of condition. First of all, it doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound like anything that I've ever heard of. But also, if this was a child, that had some kind of medical issue, would you be putting a bag on its head with no eye holes or any? That just doesn't seem right. That doesn't sit well with me. I don't think anything is normal going on here. That's for sure. I don't.
Well, and to your point with devil's advocate, it's like, if it were a deformity, it's unfortunate either way. I got the sense though that, I guess based on the vibe of the woman in the car, I got the sense that even if I couldn't see holes, maybe they were there, or it's a material you can just see through. I didn't get the sense that it was like a, I don't know, like an Al Qaeda, prison transport. And you know, if it were a deformity, that's unfortunate. That's the experience, and I do feel bad, you know, because I reacted like I reacted. You know, I was shocked and I gawked, you know, and so that's not, you know, I'm not super happy about that. If that made whatever was, you know, this thing, you know, this person in the car feel bad, that sucks. But I will say about the deformity thing, I think the where I kind of stick to like it's something maybe more, or maybe it's a disease. I don't know, because it seems like it wasn't a random, like one area was randomly kind of deformed in the sense that like, oh, that's an aberration. You know, it seemed to have a theme across the board. You know, like if they were deformities, they were coordinated to look like, you know, just so happened to really resemble the pig.
Yeah, like just every little detail, because you were close enough, every little detail that you describe is really off-putting, just in the sense of, you know, it doesn't sound like anything that I've heard about before. So, you know, I don't think that was just a, you know, out of the ordinary, you know, medical issue. I think there was probably something more going on there. You know, I'm not going to get into Alex Jones territory, you know, talking about, you know, human experiments, and which have happened. You know, there's been governments that have done some real sketchy stuff, you know, especially during the Great War. But you know, it's weird, man. You know, I wish I had more for you, but it's just such a weird encounter, man. And you know, I believe you saw what you saw, you know, and I wonder where that thing is now. You know, I wonder if it's still out there. You know, I've been trying to get him to come on the show forever. One of my like really close friends and his buddy had kind of a similar encounter years and years ago. I've been trying to get him to come on the show for a while now, but they both just keep giving me the same answer. I'll do it if he does it, and the other guys, I'll do it if he does it, and then they never, you know, I can just never get him in the exactly. I can never get him in the room together. But they've told me this story a dozen times that they were driving down desert in the middle of the night on like a, you know, just tiny road out in the middle of nowhere. You know, there's no development out there. They were driving home, and this pickup truck is in front of them, and they said that something popped its head up out of the back of the truck and looked at them. And they said it was like some kind of small humanoid thing, you know. They described it more alien-like, you know, not like a Pigman or anything like that, but they called it like an alien. And it just looked at him, and they could tell immediately that something wasn't right, and that this was just not, you know. And I think that's the vibe that I'm getting from you, is that this just isn't right, you know, that there's more to this. So, you know, I don't know what you saw, man, but I wanted to thank you for coming on the show, man, and it was great talking to you. And, you know, who knows, maybe someone will write in and have some good explanations for us, but I've never heard of anything like this before, man.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to really dig into it. You know, it's, like I said, it's one of those things where it's, you know, when you're a kid, weird shit, you know, weird stuff happens to you all the time. Yeah. And, you know, it just got buried, you know, not that you know, it was fun to be able to kind of bring it back up and explore it. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Anytime, brother.